Now, you'd have to be living in a cave somewhere to not have noticed that breastfeeding is a big issue in the media. There are always stories there. Breast is best. Breastfeed your baby. Oh no, hang on, that's too much pressure. Women don't want to. Stop telling us what is best. So my question is, within all of this, what do women actually want? So pregnant women, new mothers, what messages do they want to be out there? And this morning I'm going to present some research that I did about 2 years ago now, where I actually went back to women and said, oh, come on then, what is the solution? How can we get around this? So just a little bit of background here. This graph is taken from the Lancet series on breastfeeding 2 years ago, and it just sums up the issue that we have with breastfeeding in the UK. We have the lowest rates of breastfeeding in the entire world. Not just in Europe, not just in Western countries, in the entire world. We have an issue. Now, that in itself is a problem for health, for our economy, but actually it's also all of this stuff. It's how women feel when they aren't able to breastfeed. And this is where my passion for this comes from, that so many women come to me and say, I really, really wanted to breastfeed, but I wasn't able to do it. And if you look at the statistics back in that graph, 80% of women who stopped breastfeeding in the first 6 weeks did not want to do so. So it's not like everyone's going, oh really? Not bothered about this. Women are being hurt, they're being let down. I've just done a huge piece of research at the moment into those emotions. And this is kind of a summary from it of how awful women can feel. Now, when you look at breastfeeding, you'll often hear, I couldn't breastfeed, I didn't have enough milk, I couldn't get any support. And the whole situation is so complex. Now, this is a statement that comes from that Lancet series actually talking about this. The reasons why women avoid or stop breastfeeding range from the medical, cultural and psychological to physical discomfort and inconvenience. These matters are not trivial, and many mothers without support turn to a bottle of formula. Multiplied across populations and involving multinational commercial interests, this situation has catastrophic consequences on breastfeeding rates and the health of subsequent generations. Now, we're in this situation in the UK because as much as we try and promote breastfeeding, our culture, our understanding of it on so many different levels has actually pretty much turned us into a formula feeding society. Most women, with the right support, with the right education, with the right environment, should be able to breastfeed. And that is illustrated by rates in different countries where they've got it right, where they've got money in their healthcare systems, where they have far more midwives, far more supporters for new mothers. Rates of breastfeeding in places like Norway, Sweden, 98% at birth, 75% still going at 6 months, compared to about a third of mums here. So my question is, how can we change this? How can we actually make a difference? And of course, the obvious solution is go to mums and say, okay, so what would have helped you? What would have been different? So this was some research that I did 2 years ago. I collected the data now about 3.5 years ago because I completely underestimated just how many women wanted to take part. And I actually put a questionnaire together, open-ended, so they could write as much as they want, popped it up online, and went away for a week. Came back, I had about 1,500 responses. the amount of data was huge. And I could have sat there and go, right, okay, we'll just read the first few. But I sat there for the best part of a year and read every single one. Because I thought every single one of those women's experiences matters. Now, what I was asking them, not the obvious, do you want more practical support? Because we know women need more support. It was more about the messages around breastfeeding, what education they wanted, what promotional message they wanted to hear, and where they thought that education should be targeted. And they came up with 5 main reasons. Now, these statistics, looking at the whole sample of them, are really interesting because 86% agreed that it's important to promote breastfeeding. Great, let's promote it, let's educate. But just 10% believed that breastfeeding education messages prepared mothers for what it would be like to breastfeed a baby. And that is the heart of the issue. Because quite often we tell women, breast is best, you should breastfeed your baby. It will be wonderful, it'll be this wonderful bonding experience. Now go get on with it. Sorry, the service is completely overstretched. We can't help you, we haven't got time. There are all these messages around you, don't breastfeed in public, you shouldn't still be breastfeeding him, can't you get your figure in your life back? So heart of it is what they wanted. So 5 messages they came up with. Breast is not best, it's the normal way to feed a baby. Tell us the truth, it can be challenging. Don't focus solely on the health impact of breastfeeding. Recognize that every feed makes a difference and target a wider audience, which is my particular passion in this. The first one, breast is not best. We know breast is not best. How can something biologically normal be best? But it's everywhere, isn't it? Somehow we've absorbed it. All the posters, best start, I know what's best for my baby, best, best, best. How does that actually make women feel? Because just telling someone anywhere that breast is best doesn't help them in the slightest. We all know stuff's best, don't we? We know we shouldn't have gone and drunk some gin last night on arriving in London. We know that we should have had a nice, healthy breakfast this morning rather than a rather appealing fry-up that was offered at the hotel. So it doesn't help. It just tells us the messages. And this is what the mums were saying. Breast is best, but this puts breastfeeding on an unobtainable pedestal for some people. This then makes infant formula seem to be reachable, normal, and something that has all the stuff needed for babies. Instead, breastfeeding should be marketed as normal and perfect. Breast is promoted as being best, so if you breastfeed, you're the best mother and doing the best for your baby and making the best choices. If you can't breastfeed, where does that leave you? A not good enough mother? A bad mother? It's a horrible, horrible divisive phrase. And it originated pretty much from the formula companies because they can say, breast is best, but, oh, come on, we do good enough all the time, don't we? And they're saying breast is best to a woman who is desperate to feed but struggling to do so is like telling someone how great this bus is, how fabulous and cheap the journey, how much better it is all round, but not telling them where the bus stop is. And that sums it up, because what good is telling someone something is best? It's not. It just makes them feel terrible then if they can't. And so many women, in the new research I've done at the moment, looking at women's experiences when they can't breastfeed, this was the key message. Please stop saying this because it makes me feel so awful. I'm doing the best I can for my baby. That might not be breastfeeding, but it's the best I can do. The second one then, and this is a big one, tell us the truth, it can be challenging. I think sometimes there are time factors, but there are also the issue that we don't want to put women off. That we don't always tell them what breastfeeding is going to be like. We've got into this situation where so few women are breastfeeding that we really want to encourage it. So we try and tell them it's going to be really amazing, really bonding, it's going to be really easy, when actually absolutely nothing in life that is worth doing is really, really easy. Nothing about caring for a baby is going to be easy. It might be great, and quite often after the first 6 weeks, it does get a lot easier. But what mums were saying is that it was so sugar-coated to them that as soon as they hit a problem, and that might just be too frequent feeds, or it might have been mastitis or thrush, then they thought they were doing it wrong because they'd never been told that it could be a challenge. And some people have said to me, oh, you can't go around telling pregnant women that something's difficult. I think, how patronising can you get towards women? Of course you can. You're not going to scare them, but to prepare them. Say, right, this could happen, and this is where you go and get support. So it would have helped to have been told that it's not a piece of cake, and that you have to learn, and that it's normal to hurt, feel uncomfortable for the first few weeks, that it's natural doesn't mean it's easy and will just happen. And it was also positive. Breast is best for your baby. Breastfeeding will help you lose weight. Breastfeeding is a wonderful experience. Perhaps all true, but in no way the whole picture. And I then found it difficult, at times demanding, and my baby appeared to want to scream rather than feed serenely. I felt like a complete failure and embarrassed and guilty that I felt that way to boot. Failure is the word that keeps coming up, and we have to somehow find a way of stopping mums feeling like they failed. It's the same thing that's going on with birth and breastfeeding, this concept of failure and feeling guilty. Now, a big part of that education is actually talking about responsive feeding to mothers. Because a lot of the time we say, oh, breast is good for these reasons, this is how you latch your baby on. But how often do we really talk about how milk is made and how often a baby could feed? Because we know really at the heart of breastfeeding is responsive feeding, so feeding your baby whenever your baby needs feeding. And it's completely normal for a baby to need to feed every 2 hours. And in some research I'm doing at the moment, it could be more frequent than that. They can have growth spurts where they want to feed all the time. It's normal to feed at night. But how many mums are kind of worrying, oh, hang on, I just fed him 2 hours ago. Can I feed him again? Or should he be sleeping through the night? And all of that is not helped by the messages around them, because it's not just mums who don't understand responsive feeding, it's the society that we're living in. We don't think that feeding a baby frequently is normal. But babies have tiny tummies, breast milk's really easily digested. You need to feed them frequently. But they also try and persuade them that it's not the right thing to do. And this is my little example here of society, which someone did point out to me about a year ago that it's actually hipster society with all those beards. But just how many of these messages do mums get? And I almost feel like handing out bingo cards that if you've had a baby, how many of these do you hear? So is he feeding again? Well, my baby sleeps all night. Are you sure you've got enough milk? Said to the mum who's feeding in a really normal pattern. Rod for your own back is another one. This idea that you can spoil a baby. And he needs a routine. Routines are dreadful for breastfeeding because that supply and demand idea for breastfeeding, the more you feed a baby, the more milk you make. A lot of problems are caused by not feeding responsively, not feeding to those cues. You need to show him who's boss is another one. This idea that if a tiny baby is saying that he needs feeding, that, you should tell him otherwise. He's manipulating you. And almost my favourite one, always, you'll still be feeding him with after university. And I think any university lecturers out there can attest it is a major, major problem. All these students still being breastfed. But this, really, you're just doing it all wrong, because that's the message women get all the time, isn't it? It doesn't matter if it's pregnancy, birth, breastfeeding. Society keeps interfering. So I have this hairless woman. For some reason, she loses her hair on the first slide. But this is how mums end up worrying. Well, they listen to it. What if I'm starving him? How do I know he's getting enough? Maybe I should try a top-up, which then reduces their supply. So if we can get that responsive feeding messages to women when they are pregnant, when they've had the baby, to keep repeating it, that it's absolutely normal. The third one then, don't just focus on the health reasons. This is a good one. Although there are health differences between breast and formula-fed babies, they are not guarantees. Breastfed babies can still get ill, so if mothers are sold the idea of breastfeeding on health benefits alone, and then their baby gets sick, it can make them feel like they did it wrong, or that it wasn't actually that good, and they might as well have formula-fed as their friends who did have healthy kids. And nice one, this one. Breastfeeding is about so much more than health. It's about cuddles and closeness of bonding. It saves time, costs nothing, and you can never forget to take it out of the house with you. Why don't we emphasize these things more? And I think that one is a big one, the convenience of it once you've got it established. Fourth one, recognize that every feed makes a difference. So, we know World Health Organization, Department of Health recommends 6 months exclusive breastfeeding. But what's happening a lot of the time is mums are struggling in the middle and then stopping because they think, well, I either do that or I formula feed. And it's helping mums to work for, well, why don't you feed until the end of the week and see how you feel? Or, really well done, you've done 6 weeks, that's fantastic. Rather than making them feel that they failed again if they haven't made the 6 months. So if you really want to boost breastfeeding, you have to abandon this black-white stance. I know exclusive breastfeeding is best, but there are so many rules. No bottles before 6 weeks, no formula ever. No wonder people give up. It's a spectrum, exclusive breast at one end and exclusive formula at the other. Most end up failing to keep all the rules and give up the whole thing. The final one then is this plea almost from mums that they want breastfeeding education to target a wider audience. They're saying, we definitely need to be telling new mums about why breastfeeding is so good. But I think this all should be extended to everyone else. Everyone needs to know why breastfeeding is so important for mums to stand a chance of making this work. And how true is it that we educate mums and then they get home from the hospital and their partner says something, or their mother-in-law says something, or a friend says something, or someone in public says something, and we load all the pressure onto the woman saying, well, it's your responsibility to breastfeed. And you can tell women that breast is best till the cows come home. If their partner believes differently and the mother-in-law is trying to give a bottle, who do you think is going to win? And I know why breastfeeding is important, my partner knows, but it's very difficult to put up with others' ignorant views. Educate the general public and it would be a lot easier. Even just not to say anything. If you see a breastfeeding woman, just walk on by. It's possible to turn your head. You do not have to look. Just some final ideas. The only thing you can do is make it more normal and accepted. If everyone grows up seeing pictures of it, seeing it on TV, etc., seeing normal people doing it, it will be a normal thing to do. But we don't, do we? We don't see images of breastfeeding. If you see it in a soap, it's an issue, something is wrong, or it's just not there and everyone is formula feeding. Even toilet doors, not toilet doors, nursing room doors where you're meant to go and breastfeed your baby, there are examples that have bottles on the front of them. Baby clothes have bottles on the front. Cards for babies have bottles on the front. If you're on an iPhone and you tweet pregnancy or baby on Twitter, a little bottle emoji will come up. It's so ingrained to see bottles. And with this, go into schools, talk to the children before someone else gives them the idea that breastfeeding is something to be ashamed about and formula is normal. And it's true. We don't teach children about normal nutrition anymore. We teach them, and I've been sent so many examples where children have been sent home with colouring sheets, baby needs a bottle, or write what word baby needs a B, blank, 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 E. It's just so ingrained, and we need to change that. So just to leave you with 2 quotes, again from the Lancet series, because it fits so neatly with this. Remember that the success or failure of breastfeeding should not be seen solely as the responsibility of the woman. Her ability to breastfeed is very much shaped by the support and the environment in which she lives. There is a broader responsibility of governments and society to support women through policies and programs in the community. And the final one from Baby Friendly, if you haven't seen their call to action, go sign up to it. They want to change how society views breastfeeding. We need to change the conversation around breastfeeding by stopping laying the responsibility for this major public health issue in the laps of individual women and acknowledge the role that society, politics and society has to play at every level. Thank you. A very quick word and a book promotion.